We start JJK Chapter 240 with a pretty cool color spread of Yuta, Maki, Hikari, and Yuji. And it gives us something pretty crazy. Look at Yuji's arm there. Something seemed to be up with it when we saw him come down to fight Sukuna. But now we've got it in color, and his whole arm looks warped. Is he wearing a cursed tool? Did he eat one of the remaining death painting wounds? But all this brings up another question. Are these four technically our main characters now? Seriously, Megumi's possessed by Sukuna, Dobara's still MIA, and Gojo is dead. Yuji's lost his regular family. These four are pretty much our protagonists right now, but only two of them have shown up for this meeting of Jujutsu High's fighters. This is just the official and semi-official grade 1 sorcerers. So we've got Yuta and Hikari here with Angel, Kusakabe, and Meimei. They're hanging out on a stairwell listening to Angel make a pitch. The ancient sorcerer is the one who suggested having a Jujutsu sorcerer ambush Kenjaku while the fight against Sukuna is still going on. It's weird that Angel's the one who came up with this plan. They're supposed to have a very strong personal grudge against Sukuna. You'd think that that's what they'd be focused on, but Angel's been paying attention. Kenjaku's endgame is destroying humanity, or probably just Japan. The old sorcerer doesn't want that. Even if it means Angel has to put their personal grudge on the back burner, they want to prioritize Kenjaku. They need to be ready for him too. Hikari isn't too worried. Kenjaku's new rules make it clear that the calling game only ends when all the regular players are killed. So as long as the cast members who entered the colony prior to Kenjaku closing registration are still alive, the merger shouldn't trigger. And that's actually quite a long list. Yuji, Higuruma, Kurusu herself, Panda, Momo, Miwa, Noritoshi, and Maki are all registered players. Kenjaku would basically have to wipe out Jujutsu High's forces to win this. He can't just go around taking out isolated colony sorcerers. Yuta's with his bro on this. He and Hikari are players too, and they're planning to fight Sukuna if Gojo loses. Kenjaku probably won't interrupt that fight and risk his ally turning on him. Kusakabe, though, is already thinking through the bad scenarios. Even if they win against Sukuna, the King of Curses isn't going down easy. He could very well take Jujutsu High's forces with him. If everyone's dead after the Sukuna fight, they won't have anyone left to stop Kenjaku. Sukuna will have done all the killing for him. Plus, Yuta and Hikari are two of the stronger players. There are a few capable players, but people like Miwa probably aren't at the level where they can fight a 1,000-year-old master sorcerer like Kenjaku. They just get slaughtered. Kusakabe, everyone, as upbeat and positive as ever. No sense making everyone depressed when they're already worried. Angel, though, isn't going to hold back. She points out that Kenjaku could ambush the group after Gojo loses. Hikari and Yuta being busy with Sukuna would make sure they weren't around to fight Kenny. Even if it's not a surprise attack and Kenjaku politely waits until they're done with Sukuna, going up against this superpowered sorcerer while heavily wounded is a terrible idea. After all, that's exactly what Jujutsu High is planning to do with Sukuna. Have the less powerful sorcerers rush him while he's drained from fighting Gojo. It would be ironic if Kenjaku used the exact same plan against them. Kusakabe notes that Maki's probably their best choice for a surprise assassin. Sensible call considering her abilities acting as a sort of counter to cursed energy. Still, it's probably a bit too optimistic. Kenjaku was right there when Maki fought Sukuna. With his cursed spirit spies, he's got to have some preparations for heavenly restriction. Maki probably isn't taking him down solo. Still, even Kusakabe is not fond of this whole idea. Dividing their forces right now is risky. If it's possible, it'd be better to confront Kenjaku and Sukuna as a group. If the assassin gets killed, that's one less person to join the fight. Plus, even if they go with this plan, they need to find someone they're confident could take down Kenjaku alone. It's hard to imagine who could pull that off. Kusakabe doesn't even think his fellow first grade sorcerers could do it. Meimei snarks that this just means grade 1 isn't worth what it used to be. Her colleagues call her out for being unreasonable. It's not like she's any better. The last time she had to fight Kenjaku, she ran like hell. She had to escape to Malaysia, fleeing the country just to be safe. But yeah, Meimei admits that she almost got killed in that fight, and was so scared that she sold off her Japanese stock portfolio. She expected the whole nation to get wrecked, even that early on. She's surprisingly humble here, admitting outright that she couldn't pull off assassinating Kenjaku. She's in the same boat as the rest of them. But before the argument can continue, Angel makes a big suggestion that changes everything. They've got the perfect assassin in mind, Takaba Fumihiko. The other grade 1 sorcerers are skeptical. Hikari doesn't even understand what the comedian's saying at the time. Kusakabe mumbles with a cigarette that the only thing he remembers about Takaba is how his clothes keep falling off. Unless you think a birthday suit will make Kenjaku explode, it's not clear how this is supposed to work. But Angel has thought this through, and they're going to explain this to the rest of the group. They have to keep the full explanation a secret from Takaba because it would risk his curse technique getting weakened. But Angel's worked out how it functions, and against Kenjaku, it's going to be amazing. And with that, we finally get back to the fight. Kenjaku's not lost his smile, but it's gotten thin. His eyes are full of rage, glaring at his opponent. The Master Sorcerers unleashed a swarm of centipede curses on Takaba. They bite at his leg, lunge at his feet. One's even jumped on his head, trying to rip his eyes out. It should be a gory, violent death, but Takaba's completely undamaged by all of it, just laughing and overacting, same as always. As long as he's acting like a cartoon, he claims Kenny can't harm him. He adds a few extra ows, but it's clear he's not seriously hurt by this. Bewildered, Kenjaku calls his curses back, trying to work out what's going on. All he can do is snark at Takaba for overselling his ows. This weird half-dressed comedian just shuts down curse manipulation somehow. Jujutsu sorcery is useless for him in this fight. Takaba, grinning, starts rummaging through his pockets. He's not worried about Mullet Boy here. There's no way Kenjaku can win against Takaba. Even a kid could beat this guy, and Takaba will prove it. Because he's turned Kenjaku into Bandit Keith from Yu-Gi-Oh! Kenjaku, not a fan of that, takes the flag off and throws it to the ground. It's clear that whatever this guy imagines becomes reality. That's insanely dangerous. Takaba, meanwhile, is outraged that his foe took off the headband. It was a great look for the final boss, but this fight is still in the comedian's favor right now, no matter how he's acting. Unless Kenjaku can work something out, his 1,000 years of Jujutsu experience aren't going to do anything against Takaba. Kenny tries to rally. Every curse technique's gotta have a weak spot, right? He asks the strange man who he is. Takaba identifies himself, boasting that in last year's P1, he advanced all the way to round 1. Okay, that's kind of a major reveal, and it's really surprising for Takaba given how awful he is at comedy. Assuming the P1 is meant to be the M1 Grand Prix, Japan's greatest manzai contest, we can actually work out the stats for how well he did. Going off the public records for M1 in 2017, Takaba was up against 4,093 other contestants from all across Japan. He could have been eliminated immediately, but if he advanced to the first televised round, that would make him a semi-finalist. He would have gotten through 5 sets of elimination and been on one of the final 8 teams in contention. He would have directly been up against Toro Salmon, the eventual winner. Does he actually have some skills after all? Kenjaku, however, is not a fan. In fact, he slams the entire show. To him, P1 is stupid. The show's only funny because all the performers are awful. Takaba snarks at that. With that kind of talk, Kenjaku just made an enemy of every comedian in Japan. But Kenjaku claims that this was just a joke. He was expecting Takaba to play the straight man and answer him back. He got out of the P1 at the first round, failing at failure. That would be funny, right? But he moves on from that, bringing up Takaba's hometown of Nabe Nabe. Kenjaku knows another performer, Pony, from that area, who he figures must be tied to this new comedian. Takaba's brain has to shift gears pretty quickly to go from fighting to friendly conversation. Still, he manages, bringing up his preferred comedian, someone from the Cackling Dogs comedy show. Kenjaku seems skeptical of that, bringing up his preference for a different old TV show, Vocabula. And this makes Takaba actually start to reconsider this. Jujutsu High hadn't told him that Kenjaku understands comedy. He's the toughest audience a comedian could ask for, a dedicated fan. But this all means that Kenny can be talked to. A comedy fan can't be that evil, right? Takaba asks Kenjaku why he's doing this whole culling game plan. He's killing a bunch of people to make a giant monster. Who wants that? The old sorcerer is bored by this. He already had this whole conversation last chapter and doesn't even want to try and explain it again. It's just intellectual curiosity when you boil it down. Takaba seizes the opportunity there. He gives him a way to try and resolve this peacefully. If he can give Kenjaku something more interesting to do, there won't even be a need to fight, right? Kenjaku tries to play it cool, just giving a non-committal answer. But Takaba points and laughs. It's all over his face. And yeah, he's literally written it on Kenjaku. Make me laugh. Kenjaku scowls, furious, but it's too late. Takaba has a comedy idea now, and he's going to run with it. But if he's going to pull that off, Takaba needs to get Kenjaku laughing. He's already got a plan to get a chuckle out of the old brain goblin. He's gonna use his ultimate homemade one-liner gag, one that Kenny can use himself. Kenjaku just glares at the comic, waiting impatiently. Takaba's even updated the writing to be intrigued. And it's the same joke. Maybe? Is this just a rework of his marry me and be my Wi-Fi gag? Either way, he really needs some new material. Kenjaku's not impressed either. He sighs and starts to break down Takaba's joke. Kenny can guess exactly where he came up with it. Sitting around at a cafe. The Wi-Fi signal's terrible. Then a waitress comes up to him, trying to talk. Takaba's actually pleased. He thinks Kenjaku got the joke. But Kenjaku claims it is just because he's a pro when it comes to comedy. He could just work out how this happened, like an autopsy. And then he shoots Takaba down, giving him the brutal truth. That's a wordplay gag based on a very specific situation. It was funny at the time Takaba first thought of it, but just hearing it said isn't going to work. No one would laugh at it if Takaba tried this at P1. It's just some wordplay, not part of any kind of routine. Takaba winces, gulping for air. He looks like he's just been punched below the belt. But we're not done with Professor Kenjaku scientifically explaining comedy. He gives off a counterexample to show off exactly why this gag doesn't work. There's a joke in Japanese that combines two phrases, pull out the spine and you can't stand. It's a double meaning gag based on the kanji for spine reading in different ways. In English, it would be like, oh, rip the spine of a book, you'll fall forever. But there's two phrases here. The bit about the spine is set up, then the falling over bit is a punchline. Takaba doesn't have a setup like that. All that was in the context of his original situation, stuck at the coffee shop with no internet. So he's basically only made half an actual joke. Takaba grimaces, wincing in pain. Kenjaku's logic swirls around him. Depression is dragging him down. This got under the comedian's skin in a way the bug curses never could. Kenny's torn apart one of his favorite gags with pure logic. Takaba feels like he's back on the comedy circuit again, with Kenjaku being his disappointed partner, looking over his routine after a terrible night. The same criticism still hit. You're just thinking about yourself. Try to play to the audience for once. And that's the game. Kenjaku elbows the comic in the gut, sarcastically complimenting his show as he does so. This time, the hit does damage. Takaba is thrown back through the shrubland, wood and earth thrown up around him. Kenjaku grins. This has to have felt good. He's figured it out now. Comedian relies on Takaba's confidence with his delivery. If he can convince him his act sucks, it's no defense at all. But one good hit won't win a fight between Jujutsu sorcerers. Takaba gets right back up, yelling at Kenjaku. He's got some defenses against criticism. Kenjaku's just some random amateur who wants to heckle him. The monk might know stuff, but he's never been an onstage comedian. Well, Kenjaku has been around for centuries. He might have been a comedian. For all we know, he could have had Kaori Itadori have a late night show after giving birth to Yuji. But anyway, Takaba is sticking with his objection. You don't have to give in to the haters. Even if one guy doesn't think his act's funny, someone else might. But Kenjaku scowls at him. To him, it's rich for Takaba, the failed comedian, to even aim that high. Forget everyone. He's gonna struggle to get one guy to laugh. And Takaba starts to sweat. That landed worse than the punch. If he's gonna win the comedic fight, he's gonna have to grit his teeth and surpass his funny limits like a shonen hero. He yells a challenge at Kenjaku. A staring challenge, the simplest form of comedy. They both just pull a funny expression to try and make the other one look away. Whoever laughs first loses. It's a literal face-off. Takaba opens pretty strong, half closing his eyes and looking like he's in pain. It's a pretty bizarre expression, but Kenjaku makes this bizarre gopher face. He's got a stupid tongue extended grin while pulling away the thread holding the top of Geto's head down and lifting it up. Even his brain face is grinning. He just looks bizarre. It's too much for Takaba. He snorts, failing the face-off almost immediately. Kenjaku doesn't give him a chance to recover, punching Takaba right in the jaw while yelling to look over there. He's getting into the whole comedy fight thing. Takaba is thrown through the forest again. He's been knocked a long way from the road by this point, and he's not getting up this time. He's still trying to work out what's going on. Why aren't his powers working? What did Kenjaku even just do? It was supposed to be a staring contest. Taking off the top of your head and punching the opponent, shouldn't that be against the rules? But really, he's been hit with the most crippling thing a performer can get, envy. The idea that Kenjaku is actually funnier than him. Takaba just lays there, thinking about how funny Kenny's whole deal is. He's this handsome, long-haired guy who dresses like a monk, and he's got those weird inhuman stitches on his head. The whole thing makes Takaba want to laugh just thinking about it, but he starts to pick himself up. There are two types of comedians that will always be able to find work. People who are naturally funny and those who think they're funny. And Takaba has some confidence in himself. He repeats again and again, I'm funny, I'm funny, But before Takaba can get on his feet, he sees something laying in the undergrowth. Iori Hazenoki. His severed head is just lying on the ground. His eyes rolled back, blood still trickling from his mouth. Suddenly, all this comedy just vanishes for Takaba. He's met Iori. They fought back during the early portion of the culling games, so frustrated with his curse technique that he didn't want to fight anymore. Now the oh-so-serious sorcerer is laying there, very dead. This isn't just a comedy show that's gotten out of hand. This is a life or death struggle. If Takaba loses, he's going to end up dead just like Iori. Who could laugh at a time like this? Well, Kenjaku can. The old sorcerer has finally caught up with Takaba and asks him what's wrong. He looks down at his foe and grins, telling him to laugh. He's a comedian, right? Shouldn't he be able to keep a smile on his face even if he's scared? What comic hasn't had to fight through some stage fright? But Takaba is not laughing. He's horrified. He finally knows exactly what the stakes are. He's no longer an idiot, and that might get him killed. He can still hear his old partner's words echoing in his head. Their act wasn't funny. He hated the time they spent together. At this bleak point, when he most needs to make himself laugh and feel pride in his craft, Takaba can't even remember why he became a comedian at all. This feels like an ending. It makes sense as the end of a battle. But Gege has been a bit of a troll about these, oh, this guy totally won the fight chapter endings lately. Could Takaba turn this around? Possibly. He has at least some people in his life who have encouraged him, like his old colleague Ken. Takaba might still be able to smile through this terror, start up a new routine, and continue the fight. There's plenty of stories of comedians getting a second wind, recovering from stage fright, and delivering a jaw-dropping performance. Takaba's fear is less the audience will laugh at me, and more this guy's gonna kill me, but same principle. All he has to do is get his act moving again. But don't be too surprised if we end it here. In any other manga, this would be a textbook death scene. Kenjaku's completely shut down Takaba's curse technique. He could score a one-hit kill right now, and it would make sense. There are a few reasons to hope though. First, it's the ending text, where our narrator asks Mr. Comedian what he's gonna do next. That at least implies his fight will last for more than one chapter. And second, Gege doesn't usually shy away from showing us a corpse. They might cut away from the final blow, but it's usually a little clearer than this when the fight is over. Still, it's risky to make guesses like that. We could totally just cut back to the Sukuna fight next chapter, leaving Takaba to die. So, do you think the comedian still got a shot at this, or is this his last curtain call? Let us know in the comments. As always, I'm SliceOfOtaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.